The Kent School District Board meetings are held in public on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. at the Administration Center in accordance to the Washington State Open Public Meetings Act. Regular meetings include presentations and reports dealing with district operations, as well as time set aside for public comment. Now here are your Kent School District Board of Directors. Welcome to tonight's board meeting.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'd like to ask, welcome to tonight's meeting, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask Dr. Harmon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the meeting of the board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We allow opportunity for public comments later in the agenda. If you'd like to address the board, please fill out the blue card that's in the back and bring it to the dais. And if you wish to speak to an agenda item, please indicate on the card and your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. You will have 3 minutes to speak. As a reminder, we are listening for understanding and we will not be responding during the time you are speaking. All right, Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda?
President Salon, members of the board, Ms. Halley, yes, the supplemental personnel report and 4 grant applications were added to the consent agenda, and those printed copies of the supplemental personnel report are before you on the dais.
Point of order, I guess, or whatever. 8.08, it says Washington Traffic Safety Commission grant Martin Sartoon, but on the form it's Sawyer Woods. So do we?
Should be forswear.
So it says
Sawyer Woods. Thank you. So we'll adjust that. Should be.
Oh no, this is.
All right, we have a packed agenda today, so it's going to be a little bit. Okay. So we need a motion to add the supplemental personnel report and grant applications to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Second. No more discussions and questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, motion passes. All right, we have a packed agenda, and so there'll be quite a bit of changes here that we are also learning at the last minute. So pardon us for reorganizing. We're up to 2.0, the reorganization of the Board of Directors and election of officers. So 2.01 is the oath of office for elected officials, and I'd like to ask Dr. Watts to ask the newly elected directors, Ms. Denise Daniels, and myself, to join him at the flag.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, first name, having been duly appointed to the office of Kent School District Director, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law to the best of my ability, and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America. Congratulations, Director.
Director Daniels, this is opportunity for you to have a few words, if you'd like to say a few words, and also to introduce your family and friends who are here today.
Oh, all right. So thank you. I'm just really humbled and honored to be here, and I'm really looking forward to having a different voice in a district that my kids are in and that I've been working in for the last few years. So I appreciate my friends and family. So my husband and my 3 younger children are here. So, and also several friends. Thank you very much.
All right, so we are going to ask for a motion to, well, first we're going to ask for a motion to reorganize and ask for a motion to reaffirm the current officers to fulfill existing terms that expire June of 2018. But first we'll start with the legislative directors. We have 3 positions, the president, vice president, and legislative director positions. And so I'd like to ask for a motion to see if there's interest in serving as the legislative director position.
I would nominate myself. I guess. I nominate Director Party.
Anything else? All right, so I'd like to ask for a motion to nominate Director Ross Hardy to the position of legislative director.
Nice.
Is there a second? I'll second that. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right. Next, we'd like to reaffirm the current officers, I guess. We're going to, the board members have to be here for 2 years to become a president or vice president, so that leaves just the 3 of us. And so I'll be continuing the role as president. And so do we still need a motion?
I think we still need a motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to ask for a motion to nominate myself as president.
I so move that we nominate me as president.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. And next, I'd like to ask for a motion to reaffirm Debbie Strauss as vice president of the school.
I will make that motion to reaffirm Debbie Strauss as vice president.
All right, is there a second? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, thank you. So those are the formalities of our board formation. And next is our recognition. I'm going to go really fast because we have a full agenda. 3.01 is our School of Distinction. And we're going to call Mr. Israel Bella to recognize Crestwood Elementary, Millennium Elementary, and Kent Lake High School for their outstanding student achievement.
Thank you for that, members of the board, President Van Gosselin, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. Wonderful opportunity to recognize 3 schools And while I'm talking, I'm going to have our principals of the schools and their staff please come up behind me now. And as I say a few words, I'll turn it over to them. But we had an opportunity to attend our Puget Sound ESD celebration for all schools that were recognized at Puget Sound ESD. And we were welcomed there by Deputy Superintendent. And it was wonderful to hear the stories that were there. In addition, we had our Kent Elementary teacher, Regional Teacher of the Year, who also presented. It was wonderful and touching, some of the words she had and wisdom that she had for us all. And so without further ado, I'm going to just ask each of the principals to say a few words and then accept the recognition. Right? Sir.
President Bangadasalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Hallie, thank you for the recognition on behalf of the school, Crestwood Elementary. We're honored. I want to say a big shout out to our staff. They're a big reason, as well as the team effort. I think Dr. Borshade and the support staff of our district has made a big impact on our school and is a big tribute to the team success at Crestwood Elementary, so thank you.
I have to say I'm very humbled by the opportunity to speak to the board. Thank you to the board, Director Bangadasalam, Dr. Watts, Ms. Hallie, because I'm walking into Kent Lake new, and I am walking into an amazing staff that are dedicated to ensuring that all of our students, each and every student, is achieving at high levels. And I really feel that this award recognizes the work that the staff is doing that I now have the privilege of working with. Thank you.
You're taller than I am. Good evening, Mrs. Bangadasalam and Dr. Watts and Ms. Hallie and the members of the board. This is Millennium Elementary's first opportunity, and I think for us it was really a validation of our hard work and the amazing people that we have the opportunity to work with every day. And I might add, with the community that we serve, it's the work of the kiddos. And we are very proud of the work they did, because we were able to accept it, but we know it was because of them that we earned it. So we're delighted by that. Thank you so much.
Okay. So hopefully everybody will be able to stay. We have photos. Okay. All right, the next, thank you so much to everyone. Next is proclamations, 3.02. And we have Guest Employee Appreciation Month, and we also have Inclusive Schools Month. All right. I will read the Guest Employee Appreciation Month. Whereas guest employees serve throughout all buildings within the district, effectively embedding themselves into the cultures of an array of environments, and whereas the dedication of guest employees enables teaching staff to engage in professional development to enhance their teaching skills and abilities, and whereas guest employees provide coverage for employees to address situations that arise in life, and whereas the service of guest employees positively contributes to the mission of the organization to successfully prepare all students for their futures. Now therefore be it resolved to recognize the contribution of guest employees. The Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims the month of December as Guest Employee Appreciation Month. All right. And so
good evening. I'd like to call up Laura Lapata and Christine Workman. I thought what better way of honoring guest employees is actually having guest employees here with us in the evening.
So I have the
next one. This is for Inclusive Schools Month. Whereas Inclusive Schools Week is an annual event sponsored by Inclusive Schools Network to celebrate the progress schools have made in providing supportive and quality education to all students, including those who are marginalized due to disability, gender, ethnicity, geography, and language. And whereas the Kent School District is committed to providing an education in schools and classrooms that is welcoming and capable of educating all students. And whereas the educators of the Kent School District recognize that each child is unique, learns differently, and therefore better if teaching is tailored to their abilities and interests. And whereas Inclusive School Week provides an opportunity for educators, students, and families to ensure that schools continue to improve their ability to successfully educate all children. And whereas by the efforts to make our schools and classrooms high-performing and inclusive, the educators and families of the Kent School District have contributed significantly to building a stronger and more inclusive school community. And whereas this year, the theme for Inclusive Schools Week focuses on stand up and sit tall for inclusion, which resonates with all students, parents, teachers, principals, and community leaders who are embracing changes necessary to protect the practices in education and society, essentially making a positive difference for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims December 4th through the 8th, 2017 as Inclusive Schools Week and proclaims December 2017 as Inclusive Schools Month in the Kent School District and urges all students to join in this observance.
All right, Mr. Sender will be accepting the proclamation.
It's my pleasure to accept this on behalf of our district and community, and thank you for your recognition of Inclusive Schools Week and Month. But more importantly, thank you for our mission statement that ensures that every day in the Kent School District has a focus on inclusion. So thank you.
Thank you for all you do, John. Up to taking pictures now, and so we'll start with our schools of distinction.
You want to go at the same time?
That's all right.
Are you just here for the board or not?
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Right, 4.01, we are up to reports on the school discipline quarterly report. And Mr. Vella and Mr. Heath are available to present and answer any questions.
Once again, thank you, members of the board, President Bagdassalam, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. Just wondered before I have Randy come up and give the key pieces to the report, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to move to a quarterly reporting process where Randy will talk a little bit about, so will Tim, about coming to you with some trend data and then some pieces from that for us to ponder. And then as we move ahead throughout the year and years to come, we know what adjustments we will make throughout the year. So thank you for this opportunity. Randy.
Good evening, President Bagdassalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. I'm pleased to be here tonight and give you a comparison of the first 3 months of the school year as compared to the last 2 years' first 3 months. So we're comparing like same time periods. I just want to highlight a I want to highlight, first off, and recognize that we are ahead of, in terms of exclusionary discipline, we do have more over the first 3 months of this school year than we had last year, but we're close to where we were last 2 years ago. So there's some value in looking 3-year trends, but when we do look mid-year, it's important to remember that there are fluctuations that sometimes happen, and we kind of want to monitor as we go, but also we'll be looking at the end of the year to really see where we end up. This next slide I wanted to point out because it was something that was asked for in our annual report that was given in September, and we talk about disproportionality, and the question was asked, it'd be great if the charts pretty clearly stated if we were proportional to the population, what it would look like. So as you can see here, the numbers in the boxes at the top, if we were perfectly proportional based on the demographics of our school district, those are where the numbers should be. So you'll see that we are disproportionate in our Black African American students, our Hispanic Latino students, and our multiracial students mainly. We are under suspend our white students and our Asian students. Another thing I would like to highlight is we did the same thing with our categories around free reduced lunch rate, our ELL students, our special education students, and our gender. And so those boxes at the top would be, if they were perfectly proportional, that is what the numbers would look like. Then the last thing I wanted to highlight really was, because we are in the first year of our implementation of multi-tiered systems of support consistently across the district, I wanted to give you a update of where we are through the first 3 months. Each school has received, they have assigned to them a consultant coach that have met with each of the schools at this point and developed a plan about how they will support each school throughout the school year. All elementary schools are being supported and are using school-wide information system, SWIS, to track minor behaviors, and this allows them to quickly look and see what behaviors are being displayed and develop systems, approaches, strategies at a school level to try to address those before they turn into bigger issues. Each school has developed or is developing a process of a Tier 1 committee that those schools that are new to MTSS are just concentrating on really the very, very basic fundamentals of putting together a team that actually reflects their different stakeholders and really making clear their 3 to 5 school-wide expectations, and then defining what major and minor behaviors are. So, you know, each building, as we knew when we went into this, because some schools have been doing the MTSS work for a while now, are at a different spot than those who are just new to it. So we built a system that would help support schools wherever they may be and helping them to move forward. So we're very excited about this work, and we hope that it will have the impact that we would like it to have on some of the exclusionary discipline you're seeing in the other charts down the line. If there are any questions, I can take those at this time.
Start with Denise.
So can you tell me, when you're talking about your MTSS and your coaching and support, does that, when looking at it and you see that a lot of the disproportionality happens with the subjective, so the disruptive behavior and defiance, and so is there something that, the training that is, or support that's happening with our adults to look at possibly their responding to certain behaviors differently from different children or different students? Right, and that is part of the work. One of the pieces that changed in our policy and procedure work at the very end of last year, the discipline committee really, we did not have definitions of disruptive conduct and defiance in our actual procedures. And the committee last year defined those. And so now that work is to the building leaders to work with their individual staffs to have everyone have a common understanding of what those mean. One of the things that we have really talked to our MTSS our principals about is when you're forming these MTSS teams and you're doing this work and you're developing strategies, they're using the equity questions that we have adopted as a district as part of our race and equity work to ask the questions, are we going to be developing a strategy that might unfairly impact a certain group of students, and if so, then we need to either pull back on that or make adjustments so that doesn't happen, and then we need to evaluate the data that we're getting after we put these new strategies in place to make sure that we're not getting disproportionate results.
A more general question, yes. Do you see a goal of, let's look at these numbers, I think by incidents, is kind of what we're looking at. So how do we see this going, what are we doing around to make this go down? I mean, I like to see this at 0 for short-term suspensions, Right. What are we doing to address, not just looking at it as it happens, but how do we make it go down to, whatever the issue is, addressing it, but keeping kids in school?
Right, and there are a number of things we do. There's policy and procedure changes that you can make that aligns with new school, state laws that addresses some of these things. But the real work is done at each individual school, because each individual school, and from year to year, they have different issues that come up. And so part of forming these MTSS committees and teams is that there's a group of stakeholders at that building that include the administration, but also teachers and classified staff and parents and students at the secondary level to really look at that data that is for that building and make decisions based on what they are currently seeing. The other thing is we're really trying to build up the additional supports that are needed to address some of the bigger issues. We are continuing to try to develop our mental health contract and have school-based mental health services. We are trying to solidify our ability for drug and alcohol support for those kids who have those needs. We're continuing to work with our community organizations like Communities in Schools and others that are providing mentors for students in our schools. And we're also getting better, we're trying to get better at screening all students and trying to figure out and address issues early on before they become bigger. And then of course the other thing we're trying to do is really the social emotional learning, and that is teaching all kids around the appropriate strategies and skills in terms of social emotional.
I know I ask this almost every time, but for those students who are suspended, they are supposedly getting assignments so that they can come back and reintegrate.
Right.
Do we have any data on how successfully they do this?
No, we haven't kept any specific data on that. We continue to try to struggle to be the best way to do that. Right now, it's around providing the work and trying to really follow up and make sure they're doing that work. And if they haven't done the work when they get back, being intentional about working with them to get caught up. I mean, the good news is we are suspending kids for much shorter periods of time. So you are not seeing a lot of long-term suspensions where kids are out for 15, 20 days, which was more common a few years ago. That's a lot harder to stay up on the work and get caught up once they do. If they're out for 2 or 3 days, it's simpler to get them caught up. But that is still a work in progress that we're working to try to figure out the best way to do.
I know that even short-term suspension can be 10 days, that's 2 full weeks, and that puts somebody at a real disadvantage. So I just, former teacher, retired teacher, never a former teacher, says, I want to make sure that those kids are able to stay in school and get back on track.
Yes.
Comment, I'm pleased to see that the MTSSB is district-wide. That's something that I've been hoping for the last several years, and to have it actually starting now, to everybody know that, you know, this is what we expect, and this is what we're going to do. So, good work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, after what Karen says, I do have a question though, because the one number that just kind of still keeps jumping out at me is that elementary school, compared to last year at this time, for short-term suspensions were almost double. Any idea why?
You know, there are a lot of different reasons. It could be the SIOs and our executive director of special ed is and myself and Israel, and we're all looking at this data. Well, as I'm showing district-wide data, there each SIO pulls up the individual data of their schools as well, and are working with their principals. There are a few schools that are contributing to some of the spike there, and that's when, you know, intentional conversations about what is their team seeing is the reason why this is going on, what can we do, and kind of a problem solving mode together. So,
great, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you working. Thank you.
Yes, Randy, I appreciate the information as well, and my questions were specific. I was looking at the bar with the green, with the details, and some things just stuck out for me. The assault of staff. You know, I didn't quite understand why. I didn't know if it was accurate that there were none. There were no assaults. It said 15, 16, and I seem to remember that was when things were the worst.
No, 15, it used to all be under assault. It was not separated by staff or student. And it was through a joint committee that we had last year between the KEA and the district office that we realized that we didn't have great data as to which of the assaults that were coded as assaults were where the victim was either a student or a staff member, because the state doesn't require us to report that. And so we decided as a district that we were going to separate those two out. They will still go into the broad category of assault when we report it back to the state, but we needed some more accurate numbers. So it was last year that we actually started tracking the difference between staff and student.
Okay, I suspect that. Are things, what is it looking like? Is it going down? Now that you're separating it, can you?
Right. There's another factor that has played into this year's number a little, is that there were some new protocols that were put into the collective bargaining agreement around the definition of assault and what procedures are attached to that. And I think that has probably resulted in a greater number of codings of those assaults. And so the definition of assault is very broad. In terms of basically any kind of contact that is made, so that includes possibly a kindergarten student that is, pushing a staff member to kind of, that it may be blocking a door or something to this effect. So, I think the word assault conjures up sometimes a certain image that isn't necessarily that's why it's important to look at each individual case, which is, in the case of an assault of staff, each of those, require a notification to school improvement officers, HR, myself, and others, so that we can look at each case individually and really examine that. So.
Thank you. And finally, I'm just curious about the theft stealing. What are our kiddies stealing? What do we have?
One of the things that there's a variety. Really, theft is theft, and that could be a cookie from the lunch line, or it could be an iPhone. But
if we're suspending them.
Oh, if they're suspended, and that's part of the provisions of the new guidelines that we drew up last year on our procedures around discipline, stating that really, if you're suspending for a theft, it needs to be a significant threat, theft, not a cookie from the line there, so something of greater value, or multiple incidents of theft. This isn't their first theft. They seem to have a problem with taking others, or if there was some threat of violence, in the stealing, that would also, necessitate a greater consequence.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to kind of know specifics later, what that is.
Okay.
What are we doing? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? No. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Heath. Next is 4.02, our Safety Services Quarterly Report, and Stella and Officers Kasner and Kovich, thank you.
Good evening, President Banko, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howell. Our quarterly report this evening, just for review, is going to, much like the discipline report, is going to represent the last 3 months, September until the end of November. And then we're also going to be looking at some data that looks at each month from 2017, looking backwards at 2016 to compare, to look at some of the trends and information. We started with some noteworthy items, some positives that has been going on. As we started the year, always at the start of the year, we're doing a lot of high visibility at our elementaries, a lot of parking issues, traffic. That's always a huge concern, getting to school in general. Establishing some of our mentoring reports, getting some of our camera enhancements ongoing with some of our capital fund projects. And then our starting off real strong with our drill compliance, and we are currently, to this date, at 100% again. Schools are doing a great job with that, so moving forward. As we get into some of the data, I'll jump right on over to what the charts represent. There are 6 categories that we have here. These are the same categories that you've seen in the past in monthly reporting. Use of force, use of restraints, staff assaults, student assaults, gang-related, and drugs and alcohol. We break that down with female and then male, and then we do a classification of all, and then those numbers are stacked on top of each other. The bottom of the charts here represent the locations and where those are occurring. And as I jump to the all, where they stack against each other, or on top of each other, excuse me, you notice that September across the board in each category is relatively low, kind of the honeymoon period. We're just getting into the classes. We kind of see that with use of force. October went into 4, and then use of restraints 3. Those can include each other. So we might have a use of force and a use of restraint in the same incident, but we separate those to show the difference. We tend to see a little bit of a rise from September into October as we look at all the drug incidents, and we trend down just a little bit in November, but the numbers 15, 22, and 17 as we look at the months across, about the same overall for total incidents. They're not a huge change. We also break down with race as we're going in there, broken down across all the categories represented in Skyward. Excuse me. And then we're doing the comparison where we're looking at September incidents from 2016 to 2017. Changes of 1 to 2 and 3, they're relatively close as we look at the years. This is representing October. We're seeing a small drop in some of the use of force and restraints, which is always a positive for us. Drugs are almost even. And then November, again, we have some use of force reduction there. Restraints are even. Assaults are about even. And then we increased, looks like 7 in our drugs and alcohol. And this is the race ethnicity comparison as we're looking by the years in all the categories. There were, looking at 2016 to 2017 for September, there were some large gaps there where we reduced in the incidence of, in the categories there by race. So that was a plus as we moved into September. Some same trending occurring in October. And then we had a few spikes that actually went up in the Hispanic Latino group as we moved into November. The next portion of the represents all of the incidents in those categories with summaries. We had 21 total incidents. These are, again, to clarify, all of these represented here in these categories are what a safety officer was involved in or reported to safety. They do not represent all that's going on out there. This is just what we're involved in. Any questions as we look at any of those specifically in any of those? I don't know if you have any. And I'll just roll all the way back. A lot of data here. Sorry about that. And then the last slide represents all of the drills and compliance that all of the schools have done. Again, they've done great work finding the time, the calendar time, getting the staff training. It's done great for when we needed it. The schools are always learning, but we're trying to improve in all those processes. So they've done a great job.
Any questions?
So I appreciate again all the information on the different mentoring things that were going on. I was had a quick question on the drug classes that are being taught at Cedar Heights and the focused intervention at elementary schools. Can you speak a little bit more about what that is?
I can just touch base. I would really like to have some of our SROs actually come at some point and share some of the fine details in those. But out in Covington, SRO Karen Davey has quite a few classes that she's done, and we're really proud of that and what she's been doing. So some of that's awareness, basic awareness, other things. She's getting into a full program at a couple of the schools. I don't have all of the grade levels that it might be part of and how far she's planning on taking that, but I know she's getting her foot in the door, getting to know the kids, and trying to share some of that information out there. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah.
So.
Is it something that we're looking to put in other places of the district as well? Or I know she's done a great job in that Covington area. I'm hoping maybe we can encourage someone in or other parts of the district to help and stuff.
I think we could probably encourage Chief McCurdy to share and go out of her contract city to do those types of programmings, and I don't think we'll have a problem with that. She's very interested in doing those things. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Just a comment, I'm pleased to see that, again, Karen Davey is working with the Restorative Communities and Justice with the 6th grade kids, and I really would be interested in hearing from her at the end of the year about how she feels things have gone, or just some, again, data or just some impressions.
Sure, and maybe I can even get into another meeting where we can discuss it quite a bit, because she's also moved on to working with OSPI at the state level, and she is, and myself have become part of a committee to try and come up with training and other things for SROs and school safety officers to make more of a statewide standard, definitions, terms, other things, so that can really help at all schools. And so she's really taken a personal punch on that. She's out there. So yes, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, so I'd like to hear about that. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the opportunities you would have in looking at the discipline report. There's so much alignment between the two, and I can't help but wonder, we have all of those assaults, and are our safety officers seeing that? I mean, you're not called into all those, but something is happening. And can, the methods you're using help assist with the other cases? So is there a conversation between the discipline folks and safety?
Yes, I spend a lot of time with Randy, and my officers spend a lot of time with the deans of students and the other administrators in the process and pieces, find out what's work, having the meetings, being involved in the restorative practices, check and connect programs, all of that filters out of that discipline piece, so they're working together every day. And so they're accomplishing a lot of the same tasks as a team approach at all the sites. So it seems to be very, very positive, that even the mentoring pieces that you continue to touch base on. So we're always talking, we're taking advice from each other and trying different things. So yeah, I'm knocking on Randy's door all day.
Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Next is our 2017-18 budget status update for November, and Ms. Lisa Tyler will be the supervisor of fiscal services, will present the budget update for November.
Okay, thank you, President Mengadassalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. So tonight I will be presenting the budget status report through the month of November and providing you an update on the financial condition of the district as of through operating results of November. Of course, I just reported out the months of September and October just last week, so I can say that not a whole lot has changed as far as our projected ending, but I will be showing to you tonight the actual results for November. But it's just because of the timing, I had already incorporated much of November's activity already into my projections that I shared out last week, so just keep that in mind. Normally, from month to month, my ending projections would change more than you're going to see later in the presentation. So tonight what I'm going to share with you are current and year-to-date revenues by source, same thing for expenditures by program and by object, an enrollment review for enrollment through or as of November 1st, a review of our fund balance, both current and then my projected, and then just some things to think about as we look forward to December. And then obviously time for questions at the end. So first of all, this first slide shows revenues by source, and my presentation looks a little bit different than you saw last week because I provided an overview of our budget extension, budget revision that we prepared. So I have now reflected that column, and that will now be our new guideline as far as what we're comparing our actuals to. So that I've added that new column in right here as our amended budget. But again, just comparing, so we're showing current month for the month of November, current revenues, and then year to date. And through November, I can say that revenues are coming in just as expected, no surprises, and that's typical with revenues. They're fairly easy to predict. Collection patterns are pretty stable. I mean, we kind of know that. They're not level throughout the year, but we know what the pattern is, so very predictable. And even though, again, you'll see this on the expenditure side, but we're 3 months into the year, so that puts us about 25% of our target, mainly for expenditures. This is just coincidence that we're almost there with revenues. You typically don't see that because, again, they come in unequal amounts, but just something to look for. This chart shows, this is comparing November to November this year to last year, so you can kind of see how we compare to our revenue collections just side by side. Actually, it's 3 years, sorry. So the previous 3 years, you can compare, again, just for the month of November. So we've got it from the different revenue sources. Now we jump to expenditures. My first slide is expenditures by program. And again, I've added the amended budget column right here to compare to. So I'm showing current month and actual year-to-date with encumbrances. So again, 3 months into the year, we would expect, just on average, if we just wanted a target percentage, to be around 25% of our total budget, and we're pretty close. We really are, we're a little high, but we're pretty much on target. The main reason why we're over at all is because I mentioned this last month that November is our highest month for salary and benefits because that November is when we pay out our commitment stipends, and we actually a normal month for salaries and benefits runs between 24 and 26 million. November was 29, so it's about $5 million more than a regular month. So you can see where that November just kind of skews our expenditures just a little bit. So that's why that's over our 25% mark at all. And again, a chart comparing 3 years for the month of November expenditures by program. So you can just see we're up a bit this year in basic ed, special ed. That's kind of expected to be up. You can just look by the different programs just to see how we're coming in. So I might like to see some of these a little lower, but we're only 3 months into the year, and we're monitoring all of the expenditures very closely. The next slide is still on expenditures, but we're looking at it by object code. So here's where you can see where we have a bit higher than normal month for salaries and salaries and benefits, but our MSOCs are significantly down. So and again, even if you look at our target percentage or expenditure rate of 25%, even with November factored in, we're still hovering right around that 25% mark and very close to the previous year. If you compare last year percentages to where we're at this year. And MSOCs, however, you can see we're significantly down, so that's where we're seeing, you know, the spending controls and limitations. So you can see that those are reflected right here with the reduced spending this year compared to last year. So again, we're pretty much on target if you look at 25% to just over 25. So we're doing okay still as of the month of November. And then just another graph again comparing 3 years, previous 3 years for the month of November expenditures by object code. Salaries and benefits you would expect to be higher. You know, those costs, as we know, are not going down. Supplies and materials, this is good that it's very flat or even a little bit less there. Contract services, we obviously paid out some of our contracts this past month. So this is an area that we will also be monitoring closely, just because this could easily get out of control a little bit, but we're, again, monitoring it very closely. So this chart compares year-to-date revenue collections and, again, November to November, year-to-date from year to year. And so you can see we're up, our revenue collections are up from this point this year compared to last year by just over 3%. And then what I do here is I just calculate it out to a monthly collection. So last year we were collecting on average a little over $30 million per month. This year we're 31.2. And then what I do here is based on a lot of data, I'm calculating my 12-month revenue projection. And again, I mentioned this last week, sorry, that this number here will continually change as, you know, as we get further into the year, actuals are accounted for, you know, more information is received. So this target here it's a very live number and is always changing as we get more information. That's what I use to project my August ending fund balance. So same thing here for expenditures, and this is expenditures by object. And again, comparing year-to-date this year to where we were last year. Last year, total, we were at 89. This year, we're less, so we're at 87%. So overall expenditures were down almost 2%, okay? And the net of those were up in salaries and benefits, which we put significantly down in our expenditures. So this is where, you know, we're seeing some of our controls and our spending limits. So this is what we hope to continue seeing, this type of a percentage here on our expenditures. And so again, I calculate out to an average monthly expenditure per month, and same thing for, you know, for both years. And then this number I'm projecting total expenditures for the year, which again will continually change month to month. Enrollment. So for November 1st, we're still ahead of our projection. And so you can see out here, if here's this column right here shows November enrollment, which projects out to just a straight annual average. And so if all things hold true, we will come out, you know, actually very well above our projection, which would be a good thing. Unfortunately, like I discussed a little bit last week, enrollments do start to decline pretty much from January or February throughout the rest of the year. So this number here will slowly diminish throughout the spring. So unfortunately, we won't be in this positive situation really for too many months looking ahead. And then fund balance. So here we have our adopted fund balance. What I see I haven't added here is my amended budget, which I will add that. So as of November, as of the month of November, we have a positive ending fund balance of $624,000. Positive. Currently, I'm projecting a year-end fund balance to be, again, these are positive numbers, so $1,004,000. So with the information I have today, you know, our best estimates, and all things being equal, we could say that we would have a projected ending fund balance of $1.4 million, which I'll take that. And I'd like to show this slide just to see, you know, that fund balance levels, it is normal for us to see fluctuations. And I want to point this out now because really from December through March, our fund balance will decline. And in all honesty, we will be back in the negative for probably the next 4 months. That's normal that it declines. It's not normal that it's negative, but you know, I think we all know our situation. But by the end of the year, you know, we will have hit our next influx of significant revenue, which is April with our property tax collections, and that will, you know, sway this line back above the red. So again, just want to show you that the trend is normal, the level is what we're working on. So looking ahead to December, one thing to remember is that our December payroll, past practice is that we pay out mid-month instead of the end of the month, which puts a bit of a strain on our cash flow. So just something to be aware of. And then I already mentioned this, but from here forward, over the next few months, our fund balance will steadily decline until we get later in the spring in April. And then just to note that we're already gearing up for 18-19 budget development and getting ready for that. Okay, any questions?
That's right. Okay.
No, I don't have any questions, but thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Same thing for me, Lisa. Appreciate your presentation.
For one clarification, I'm pretty sure I've got a calculation here, because we talked about it before. Looking at expenditures by object, you're showing the percent of budget expended this year versus last year. Last year's saying, hey, here's the first 3 months of last year compared to all of last year's spending. Even if last year's spending may be higher or lower than what we're looking at now, we're saying this is what you can kind of weigh where we're at compared to where we were at the same point last year. Okay.
Right. Let me get there here real quick. Okay, so right here you're talking about?
Right, so let's say...
So this is comparing November to November. Is that your question?
It's year-to-date, I'm assuming is what we're looking at here, year-to-date percent. So last year, we're sitting here, we spent 25.75% of the total budget of that year, and then now we're sitting 25.65%.
Right.
Okay. Okay, just clarification, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question. Okay, the contract services. I know we talked about significant reduction in that, and I'm seeing like maybe 11%. I'm not sure, 3%. If we look at the percentage of change from year to year, it's we're looking at MSOC and supplies and contract services, but it's really the expenses are really up on the salary side end of it. So if it's the contract service part, if we have considerable reduction in that, is that going to have a significant effect on our budget?
Well, there's two parts. I'll probably have to get back to because I want to drill down. I think we've been promising to give you detail of what exactly contract services means. So I will do that.
So can I interrupt and ask? I think for the public, maybe we should explain what compensatory education is.
Sure.
Commitment stipend and all of those things that seem like they should be moving in different directions.
Okay. Would you like me to do that now?
Sure, please.
Okay. So one of your questions was compensatory education. So that is those are our federal programs primarily, your title, ELL, and I'm not going to be able to rattle them all off right now. Basically, the federal educational programs. Okay, so that's what compensatory education means. So that's expenditures for those types of programs. Your other commitment stipends. So that's a salary-related payout. That it's kind of an employee benefit. It's additional salary based on years of service, and it's graduated levels. Not all employees get it.
And so when we think about seeing those, this is about programs. So here we can say, here's compensatory education, the program. But these stipends, I don't know how many you get, but they could be anywhere within that. Basic education, inclusive education. It could be within any program.
Correct.
All of them.
Right, because pay types associated with an employee typically follow where that's the source of funding for that employee comes from.
Okay.
One other thing I did want to note is that as I report out to you monthly like this, we like to consider this preliminary information. However, with that being said, the confidence level in these numbers is very high. The only reason we want to refer those as preliminary is because they are prior to Julie actually closing out the month. So the only difference between these numbers and what they will actually be are just normal, minor accounting month-end corrections. And I just want to make sure that we do publish a full comprehensive financial report for all funds. And so if you're seeing that and reading it, great. If you don't, or I'll make sure that everybody knows where that's available. September and October have been published at this point.
That sort of leads me to the question that I was thinking. We've talked about having a website that the public can see this sort of information without having to dig through our website. And I know we've talked about that. I don't know where it's at, but can we make it very clear to access this information for the public? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. All right. 6.0. Board of Directors discussion and approval, and Dr. Luann Decker will present on the educational programs and operations levy.
President Venkatasalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Holly. We are bringing a discussion topic for the board to consider tonight. During the board work session, you were able to hear additional details about what are some of the contributing variables that might impact our Proposition 1 for our educational programs and operations levy that we plan to put before our voters on February 13th, 2018. Our current, and then we'll open each of these, but I'll keep on the narrative for just a minute. On November 8th, the board approved the Proposition 1, Proposition 1528, for a total of $83 million. And that is a 2-year educational programs and operations levy to continue the high quality and paying for those high quality services and programs that basic education doesn't pay for our kids each and every day. This is about 20% of our current operational budget in the Kent School District. And so given our current fiscal situation, we knew that the board would want us to seek outside counsel and get additional insight into to ensure this levy was right on track to meet the needs of our kids and families in Kent. And so we received some of that outside counsel, and so we wanted to bring 2 propositions that the board could consider tonight. And so one is Proposition 1530. I'm going to keep it here for just a minute. One of the things you're going to notice is Kent School District, by state law, can only collect $1.50 per thousand of assessed value. One of our variables, our two variables, are either student enrollment, and the second variable is assessed value in the Kent School District. And so what this proposition here, 1530, does is it stays within that $1.50 per thousand assessed value, but creates a little bit more capacity given how the assessed value has grown in the Kent School District and some of the trend data that you saw earlier this evening. This would have our 2019 year collection be $42,500,000 and our year 2 collection be $46 million. I will review both, and then we can have some discussion. Proposition 1531 creates even a little bit more capacity, staying within that $1.50 per thousand. 2019 collection would be $44 million, and 2020 collection would be $50 million. So we know our student enrollment in Kent School District has been relatively flat, with just slight increases over the last few years. So our number one variable we have to consider is what do we really believe is going to happen with assessed value. In the earlier presentation during the board work session, we saw some of our trend data, and what we know is, like in the 2018 collection year, King County is anticipating our assessed value growth at 13.4%.
So what year was that for? Was that for end of this year or into next year?
End of the that is what they're anticipating, projected for the end of the 2018 collection. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, as you heard earlier in the board work session, just to bring back what those assessed values are considering. So scenario B is based on an assessed value growth rate of 16% in 2019 and an 8% growth in 2020. Scenario C considers a 20% assessed value growth rate for the Kent School District in 2019 and back to a 15% in 2020.
Do you know what the original 1528 would have had in those for same growth rate?
Our original proposition, 1528, considered a 10% in 2019 and a 7% in 2020.
So what do you think is real? Realistic, but realistic.
You know, I would be happy to bring back the
Yeah.
base provide us some additional.
I just want to answer.
Well, I think their context is also their context is the region, and so they have, I think, a broader context that might be able to provide at least some scope about what some other districts might be seeing.
Yeah, that trying to truly sort of put a pin in what AV growth is going to be, no one would be able to do that.
That being said, there clearly are some upward trends. We've seen some jumps, certainly in the region over the last few years. To some degree, the issue is sort of less about what we think the AV is going to be and more about if you truly want to sort of ensure that you are sort of living kind of the new levy paradigm to make sure that you identify a value that is high enough that will allow you to adhere and maximize your levy collection as a district. And so one of the challenges with AV is that we just don't know what it's going to be, but that $1.50 per thousand is the ceiling. So regardless of whether you think AV is going to grow 50% or 100% in the next couple of years, the district will be only, and taxpayers will only see $1.50 per thousand.
That's what we're just, AV is the mechanism by which we say, here's the max amount of money we're going to put out there, and we roll back to $1.50.
Yep, exactly. Probably didn't answer your question, but.
It did, in the sense that we're not really like actually scoping out what realtors are thinking and saying, hey, what is the growth rate here? Because that growth rate's not really our target. We're not trying to nail down that number. We're trying to target the total amount of money we need to raise, in this case over 2 years. That, you know, in all likely scenarios will be rolled back, but we won't leave anything on the table.
I was thinking maybe, Dr. because not everybody was in the work session, if you could give just a quick thing of what when we say roll back, I think that would be good for
Sure.
to understand.
Yeah, so when a district levies a dollar amount as part of a levy that gets passed, you can only collect what the law allows you to collect. So you as a board can pass, I mean, arguably any levy amount you want to, but the law will limit what you can actually collect. And so if you pass a resolution that says that we want to collect $100 million, and specifically in a general fund levy, but the law only allows you to collect up to a certain amount, that amount, the difference will get rolled back. So it's just a kind of a technicality. It's just something that is sort of a check and balance associated with general fund levies that are passed. So it's not terribly unusual that a levy amount will be a little bit higher than possibly you could collect by law, just to make sure that you don't, as bad as it sounds, leave anything on the table. You sort of mentioned that terminology. So it's not unusual, in part because a levy amount is kind of art. There's a little bit of art associated with coming up with that amount. So it's not pure science. So from that standpoint, rolling back a levy amount isn't terribly unusual. And if anything, it sort of provides you with that sort of a surety that at the end of the day, you'll be able to collect what the law allows, but then it also will cover you from possibly not leaving anything on the table.
So, should we make a discussion or any other discussion? I have some comments.
Let's say as it stands, you know, looking at the growth rates considered, what we've already passed for 2028 seems like we might be leaving money on the table, especially in 2020. So if we pass the 2-year levy, it locks in both years. So even if we see a larger growth percent, having I know it's never, but having a single-digit growth percent in 2020 seems like it could leave money out there without us having to go back. We probably want to do a 1-year supplemental levy. A lot of extra work to kind of get that money back out. And costs.
Everybody agrees? Yeah, I know 4 years ago we were at the same point, and we maximized our levy, and regardless, we weren't able to collect, and that was really disappointing. $13 million we had to because of the rollback, and so I think now we're more informed, and I feel like I agree we shouldn't be leaving the money on the table, and we should maximize our levy number. And so Do we need to come to a decision? Okay, so I'm opting for schedule. Denise. No, do you have, if anyone would like to start, recommendation?
I think we should go with scenario C. I mean, we've got a cap on $1.50 for every 1,000. It's put 500 million out there, we still wouldn't collect it. So, I mean, if we can help the public understand that, you know, we're just insuring ourselves for the next couple of years to make sure that the growth, the assessed valuation is, if it grows, and we're still being able to collect the money that we can use.
In the case, if we think that what we previously passed 1528 is not what is appropriate for our district, then we should repeal that first and then decide on what to pass next.
Yes.
With a motion, yes.
With a official motion.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion to repeal 1528?
Awesome.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right. So resolution number 1528 has been repealed. Now, would anyone like to make a motion to adopt resolution 1531? Scenario D.
I second.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Sure.
So I was just curious on one thing. So as far as communication and what this looks like as far as what we may have already communicated to our public versus what we will now need to communicate to our public.
So, so up to this point, we have been holding off on all district communication. The only thing that has been shared so far was a general overview of both propositions with the principals last week. And so the assistant principals will be trained on the same levy information that the school district is allowed to share with the public tomorrow, with any updated numbers that the board might share tonight, and then that PowerPoint will be uploaded and correct for the building principals to give for their presentations. So up to this point, no actual information has been shared from the district.
And it's back, I'm looking back, November 8th, we passed two resolutions. One was 1528, one is probably 1529.
That's right.
For a capital technology limit, I believe. That one remains, and we're replacing it, really just changing the amount of the levies that we push forward.
Correct, 1529, and we're not making any changes to 1529.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, all those in favor of adopting resolution 1531, scenario D, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right. Resolution 1531 passes. Thank you so much for all your work, Dr. Decker, and yes, coming in. Thank you. Appreciate all your information. All right, 7.0, moving on to relinquishment of pedestrian access easement at Carriage Crest Elementary. Does the board have any questions?
I always like to see a map, but it's not big deal, I guess. Hi, Fred. It's nice to see you.
On the west side of the school, we built the school, the access had to cross the neighbor's property. It wasn't very big, but we still had to have an easement. Since then, a developer has gone in and developed that property and built a street. So now the access is across the King County street and not across the neighbor's property. So they are trying to clean up the title for the property. So they've requested that we relinquish the easement.
Thank you.
7.02, revision of board procedure 2152P, student travel, field trips, and excursions. Does the board have any questions?
I was just curious to work communicating this. I know there's some changes in this policy, or this procedure, that are a little bit different, so I'm just wondering how it's being communicated out to schools.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. The communication, I think the key piece, the communication started with your board taking action last year on international field trips, so that was first. And recall that we wanted to align our procedure with that. That's the purpose of this revision. And so communication really is reiterating that action that the board took. But more specifically, that you'll notice the three key pieces to the revision are, the first is being clear about the international field trips and what the board took action on. That's the first piece, and you'll see that in that paragraph. The second is being very clear about what a school-sponsored trip would be separate from a privately sponsored, and so those are what you see in blue. The third one, I think, Director Strauss, what you're seeing in terms of communication that will be most important is on the list of forms you see. One of the things we wanted to do is shore up how we are keeping track of and also making sure checklists are provided in the schools in terms of making sure we have appropriate number of chaperones, for example, looking at risk factors, etc. We aligned that with the Seattle Public Schools. I happen to know someone there and someone who worked there, and aligned some of the language with that. And so extensive work went into that. The other thing I know this is more of an answer I wanted you to know, the board, is that work very closely with Curtis in terms of the risk factors and things like that. So the language you see is very much been edited and looked at by Curtis.
I appreciate the detail after going through what we went through last year with international travel, just going through this real specifics about what is and what isn't and what's expected, and also I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Brewer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Right, we're up to consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I'd like to know 8.07, please.
Same with me. Anything else? No? What? Okay. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 8.07. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, Debbie, start with 8.07.
So I just have some questions on 8.07. When I was looking at it, there were a couple of things. One, there's great difference between 90,000 and 39,000. So kind of wondering what the differences in services were, as well as when I looked at the PDFs that were attached, it referenced services provided on it, but there was, all I saw was the contract. I didn't see anything else. So I'm kind of curious about that, as well as is this money that we had already budgeted? How does this all work in that?
All great questions, and I apologize. I did see your questions, Director Strauss, and did respond, so you have more detailed answers to those questions. But in general, for the rest of our board, all great questions. I want to start by, first of all, talking about the Learning Assistance Program. There are two funding sources that we get as part of our state apportionment. The first is basic LAP funding, and that's through the grant process, etc. The second one is LAP high poverty dollars, which the state approved and added additional dollars on top of that. The requirements remain the same, so deeper into the high poverty, the grants you see are specific to the high poverty dollars, and so there are requirements under each one of those and how we track those. So that's I wanted for our new board members to understand the LAP piece to it. specifically to the variance of what you see, Sylvan Learning is an entity or a company we worked with a number of years ago. Some of you may remember under NCLB, our supplemental educational services. Many districts across the country looked for different ways to provide service and offer to our families. We work closely with Sylvan, and that's one reason why we went back to them, in that they provide a more customized learning opportunity for our students related to reading and math, and that's specific to LAP. It must be under those two areas in elementary school. Secondly, the requirement is that only serving students that are not meeting standard in those two areas. And it must be related to either a state, district, or a school-based assessment that measures against standard. And so not all students, back to the question, not all schools have the same number of students not meeting standard in reading or math, hence the variance in the contract. The reference to attached really speaks for Sylvan. If you look at the number of services they provide a number of services, not just in those areas, but it's broad. What we do is work with them to customize by school in the specific area. I mentioned the data that we need to use to qualify for that service. They'll customize that based on that data. And so that's why you see the variance. Some are for 50 hours of service for X amount of students, etc. The good thing that they, since we've worked with them before, they've allowed us to, an example, once students are meeting standard, they no longer qualify for that LAP dollar. But we can slide in other students because, as you know, students throughout the year regress. And so that's one thing, what we appreciate about Sylvan is we're allowed to do that. And that's really what we should be doing regardless of the funding source. So those are the key pieces I wanted to share about the contracts. You see it in this manner just because I wanted to also share that part of this LAP high poverty dollar was not granted to districts to very late in August. And so you might imagine as districts, and I know this as I belong to a number of state committees where we shared this with the state and saying, you kind of, bound our hands in terms of not having the dollars early enough to strategically plan how we wanted to utilize these dollars. So we're not alone. So I wanted to share that. And as you recall, we did put in a no new additional staffing last year. And so we were clinging to that. And so we're looking for other ways to provide services to our students without having to hire a staff. And so that's part of the reason we did it in this manner. So we're looking forward to next year where the state is looking at the possibility of allowing us to use the next 2 years to spend that resource so that we're not spending it on things that are not going to make an impact on student learning.
I would be curious to see, like, at the end of the year, how many students were actually served by this and the growth. So if we had 100 students that went in a school and by the end of the year all 100 were meeting standard, that would be very interesting.
Absolutely. We definitely will come back to you because that's actually required data we were supposed to keep under LAP. So we have coding for LAP students that receive services, and we actually have to show growth. And so we can certainly come back to you to let you know overall, here are the number of students that were served, and here's how they achieved, because that also informs us in, is this the right service?
Yeah, I had the same question as Debbie, but I was also wondering how many organizations bid for this, and what was the process that you?
Part of that process, as you know, we looked at how else can we utilize the dollars and get the services to kids, and so we actually interviewed several agencies that claim they provide service. We landed on Sylvan, as you know, so we've used them before, and I remember I was here as a director at that time. They do a great job of working with the school district. and the schools in terms of the data that I mentioned, and they actually communicate with parents. And I think that's a critical piece. What's my child working on? What is their customized learning plan? And how do I know that they're making progress against what they're doing in school?
Okay. I just want to make sure that when we're doing these bids, they're competitive bids. Or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
We are, okay, so we need a motion to approve 8.07.
So,
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Next up is our communication from the audience. And we have one member of our audience, Mr. Austin Freeman, here.
Hello, I'm here on a very positive, thankful note. This past Saturday, the JSA chapter of Kent Ridge High School hosted a conference at Kent Covenant Church, and I just wanted to personally thank school board directors Maya Mangadaslam and Denise Daniels for spending your mornings and coming, and I know Ross already wanted to, totally fine, and I just wanted to kind of personally just say what a success it was. We had total attendance of 41 students. 3 came from, or actually total of 4 came from Oregon or Eastern Washington, came here all the way to Kent. Specifically throughout the day, we had 41 attendees. A total of 14 Best Speaker or Moderator Gavel Awards were handed out at the end of the day. And due to our more or less high attendance, we raised a net profit of $90. Which is going to be divided into 2 scholarships of $45 and will be given to 2 Kent Ridge students in forms of scholarships so that they can attend the Winter Congress Convention in Portland on February 3rd and 4th. And just big event on myself and the other officers of Kent Ridge High School JSA, and I just wanted to thank my ladies for spending your time on Saturday morning, waking up early and coming and interacting with our students, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Austin. Dr. Watts?
Yes.
Oh, pardon me. Legislative update. It's not here. So.
It'll be next week, but thank you for
Sorry.
bringing it.
Yes. Well, I can actually provide a balanced report with legislative priorities as part of the focus. So, President Mangadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Howley, staff, and community, I want to first begin by echoing the sentiments of one of our honorees, several of our schools, all of our students and our staff. On Monday, 2017, Washington Schools of Distinction Award was celebrated at Puget Sound KSD. And it was a night that I will not soon forget. And I think about the why is that there were so many adults, more importantly, students who were represented there, and teachers and support staff, that measured proficiency over time. And this is different. This means we're doing well, not just one moment, but over several years. And there were dozens of schools that were represented, dozens of districts that were represented. And Kent School District had the opportunity to shine. And we were KSD proud. And why? Because our jazz ensemble from Kentley provided jazz music during the opening, 4:30 to 5:30. I could close my eyes, thought I was at a concert with professionals. Our regional PSESD 121 Teacher of the Year and KSD Teacher of the Year, Ms. Alicia Sacedo, as Mr. Velo mentioned, provided a powerful leadership story and a reminder to all of our teachers and support staff to never underestimate the power of high expectations with love and support. And our 3 schools, Crestwood and Millennium and Kent Lake, were honored for their ongoing support of students in ELA or MAP and graduation rates. That's our summative assessment. And that's really the beginning of our success indicator. How our students perform once they leave Kent School District is our true measure of success. Very proud, and at the same time, a reminder of the great work that's still ahead of us, because our goal is to be present, even more so, at Washington Schools of Distinction Awards each year. Tonight, we also discussed our resource management opportunity to be a more effective organization. We know we can't do this by ourselves, and another example of teamwork is our leaders at the state level at OSPI and PSESD again, as well as our leaders within our staff who have worked tirelessly to calculate, recalculate, to crunch numbers, and to provide a presentation that gives our school board directors enough information, not to be dangerous, but to be informed, and then to make a certainly a more informed recommendation based on the conclusions that you draw. I can't speak enough about support that PSESD has continued to provide and OSPI, given our current budget challenge, which is now an opportunity. They have provided experts in the field whom we have leaned upon, aligned with the resident experts in our field, who have given themselves an opportunity to ensure that we are at a healthier fiscal state. And I will conclude by simply saying, when we think about this work, we know we can't do it by ourselves. We remind ourselves that success is measured not in certainly what happens. Yes, we want to get quality results. But we want to make sure that we're doing it together. And in Kent School District, that is a goal, and our student, Mr. Freeman, is a reminder of the reason why we do what we do. So continue to work ahead of us. We've got hard work, smart work, proud to serve, and thankful for the opportunity. That concludes my report. Thank you so much.
You have a lot of activities, right? Because usually we talk about what happened this past week.
Stuff down for this month, really, for Thanksgiving.
Anything you'd like to share?
So I was actually very excited and encouraged when Maya and I did attend the event, the JSA event. It's amazing to see so many young people who are so passionate about their education and about legislature and about what's happening with our future. So that was really fantastic, very intelligent, very knowledgeable, strong young people, and most of them were really concerned about student voice and how we incorporate student voice, which is a huge piece of my belief of how we can be a successful district. But that was probably the highlight of my week. So I was excited.
And I actually just happened last week, and we haven't really been as board about a month, but there are 3 elementary schools throughout the Kent School District that did the Parent Academy for Student Achievement. And it's a parent-involved thing. I remember seeing it when I went back to school night at my kids' elementary school. And it's a way to engage parents about just how to navigate anything for their kids' life. And I know they target elementary schools, and they're targeting kids they get in. Easy stuff like how do you get into Skyward, how do you see their homework, how do you see their grades, stuff that as parents we didn't have when we were kids. Maybe we were blessed or not for that. But it was great. I went to the graduation. They had, it was one of the best ways I've seen to engage parents where they're at and their students, supporting their students, but also have parents engage with each other. So one of the things I wanted to do was figure out how parents, when they come in to our school system, how do they view it? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Is it different? And I've had a couple of families. Some had been here for a while. Some just moved here from Bangladesh, and they're talking about how they love this program and they've been able to figure out what their kids do. I know it rotates around schools, but it's one of the programs I see that is really working getting students early. You're getting students and parents early. It's elementary school, so they can follow their kids, through achievement as they go through graduation. So, really enjoy that.
I've got just two things, I guess, about my mentoring. I've taken care of my 3-year-old grandson for the last week, and I'm exhausted. But 3 days left. This is my time out. But I've been meeting with my mentees. I have the 2 that are in our school district now, and it's always a challenge. I mean, and I've talked with other mentors about the challenges that they're having with their students, and it's all different, but there are needs there that just need to be met, and it takes time to build a relationship and to have the student trust you enough to let you in, I guess. My 5th grader, this is my 3rd year with her, just asked me if I would come and be part of her holiday party on Friday. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I emailed her teacher, and she said, yes, by all means. So I'm going to be at her holiday party. And my high school student is struggling, but looking at options. I'll just say it that way. And so continue to work. Just wish I could just hold her up, but I guess I'm doing that in certain ways. So anyway, that's it for me.
So I had the opportunity to go to the PTA meeting. It was last month. I'm not sure what it is anymore. They all blend together. But they had their community partners there that night. So they had different community partners to help inform the PTAs about what it was. So it was great to see the different partners there and to have an opportunity to speak for a moment. And then I also attended the principal and president luncheon that PTA puts on, and got to deliver a short message on behalf of our board about how much we have valued their work and the things that they do to help support our districts. And then I also was at PASA. I went to Pine Tree, and I always enjoy going and listening to the parents. So this was a total Spanish speaking, and I would say the majority of the parents there did not speak English, very little. And I think my highlight was hearing them talk about how they had access to the web and internet, things that they didn't really understand before, that I know I take for granted. But then they had all their kids in the back just cheering on as the parents walked across the stage, and how excited those kids were for those parents. So it was a great thing to see. And then, as well as mentoring, I've been with he's a 3rd grade student now. We started last year in 2nd grade, and just when I got there, they said, oh, he's been so excited for you to come today. And just really, again, being able to build up those relationships as we get to now where it was great to see at the beginning when we started last year. It's like, I'm not quite sure who you are, but now he was making sure we took turns, and he's a fluent Spanish speaker and is just learning English, and so we're learning back and forth as we can. I know a little bit of Spanish, and so he's always seems to brighten up if I can say a word in Spanish. He's like, yeah, and I was like, okay. So that communication. So again, I will always put a plug in for mentoring. I think as I look around, most of the people here have been involved in mentoring in some way. But encourage those as you're out on break that you may know that we do always have a need for more mentors. I know I've been pushing outside of our district. I got my dad is actually mentoring in Bellevue now, and he gets to do it for 3 hours once a week. And his biggest challenge, he called me the other day, he goes, I don't know what to do. I've got a little kid who wants to come up and hug me, and our paperwork said absolutely no hugs. And he goes, I don't know what to do with this little girl. I said, I'll talk to her teacher. I'm sure she means well. But just that, making that difference. And I always walk out of mentoring going, wow, I wish I could do this all day long. And along with that, I wanted to just say how much I appreciate each one of you that work with our students every day. And I know it's not just while you're at work, you're thinking about it when you go home, and you're looking at ways that you can help and inspire them. And I appreciate that. Please make sure that you take some downtime for yourself over this holiday season, and so that we can continue our great work. So thank you.
Yes, I wanted to first just thank Sunrise Rotary for having me. As with many folks in our community, they're worried about, concerned about finance and our communication. So my hope is that what we're hearing in our work sessions and our budget meetings, I'm hoping that we can do a better job of communicating to our public, and so that there is an opportunity for them to ask questions. And I think when questions are asked and there is an explanation, we may not have all the answers, but it always helps to bridge that trust. And I really came away feeling really good about that conversation. It was very blunt, but you know, I've said this very often, you know, hold us accountable. I mean, we are here to serve the public. And so I appreciated the questions, and I'm hoping we can have more of that transparency throughout our district. I wanted to also thank everybody who coordinates PASA as well. It is probably one of our most treasured programs, and I hope it can be replicated in other schools. The power of parent empowerment, there's nothing like it. I wanted to thank the multilingual education team for their presentation. You know, all of us sort of come together, the multilingual education team, PASA, and then being at the Junior State of America, the JSA conference, really appreciated that we have this model, student model United Nations program. I don't know if anybody's aware of what the program is, but we didn't used to have that in Kent, and I just realized we have 3 in our high schools, and I mean, it is fantastic. You know, if we want to engage our kids in debate, speech, there's no better place to empower our students to speak out about our world current issues and world politics and civic engagement. And so how that, you know, all of our programming comes together with our students really demonstrating, you know, their knowledge. It's really powerful to see them debate on issues like stem cell research, and you have to be there to see this. I mean, it is so powerful. I'm hoping next time we can videotape, because that was so valuable to see that. I mean, these are our kids, you know, I was really proud to be there too. And the same thing with our Doug Ferguson's here, you know, our kids in STEM and all of these programs that they do. I'm hoping we can capture it, you know, and really let the public know, you know, all the good things that are happening in our schools. Okay? So thank you so much for everything that you do, and I know, as Debbie said, you know, we wish you a great holiday season, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great New Year. Thank you so much for all you do. All right, have a good evening. We're adjourned.